The job was supposed to be simple. Iris Chen had translated for criminals before. Not knowingly, but in hindsight, some of those import-export businessmen had clearly been moving more than furniture. She'd learned not to ask questions. Translation paid well, and her mother's memory care facility didn't accept moral objections as currency. Tonight's client was different. Tonight's client came with armed escorts, a private floor of the Meridian Hotel, and a fee that would cover 3 months of her mother's care in a single evening. Tonight's client was Nico Valenti. She'd researched him, of course. The internet painted contradictory pictures: legitimate businessman, suspected crime lord, philanthropist, monster. The photos showed a man in his mid-30s with dark hair, darker eyes, and a face that belonged on magazine covers or wanted posters. Nothing she found explained why he needed a Mandarin translator for a meeting with Taiwanese semiconductor executives. Nothing prepared her for the reality. He was waiting in the penthouse suite when she arrived, standing by floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city like a kingdom. Taller than the photos suggested. Broader. Radiating a quiet intensity that made the air feel thinner. "Miss Chen." His voice was low, controlled. "Thank you for coming on short notice." "Mr. Valenti." She kept her own voice professional, neutral. "Your assistant mentioned this was urgent." "The men I'm meeting tonight flew in from Taipei this afternoon. They claim to only speak Mandarin." Something flickered in his expression. Suspicion, maybe. "I have reason to believe they're lying, but I need someone who can confirm it." "You want me to catch them speaking English?" "I want you to translate accurately and observe carefully." His eyes met hers, dark and assessing. "Can you do that?" "That's what you're paying me for." The ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Good. The meeting starts in an hour. My assistant will brief you on the technical terminology. Try not to look so terrified." "I'm not terrified." "Your pulse is visible in your throat." He turned back to the window, dismissing her. "Work on that." The meeting began at 9. 3 men from Taiwan, Mr. Lin, Mr. Huang, and a younger man introduced only as assistant, settled around the conference table with the careful formality of people who expected to lie and be lied to. Iris positioned herself at Nico's right hand, her tablet ready for notes she hoped she wouldn't need. The conversation was technical. Semiconductor manufacturing, supply chain logistics, pricing structures that made her head spin. She translated smoothly, her Mandarin flowing easily after years of speaking it with her grandmother, her mother, in the tight-knit community that had raised her after her father left. For the first hour, nothing seemed unusual. The Taiwanese executives spoke only Mandarin as advertised. Their English, when it slipped out in technical terms, was heavily accented and hesitant. Everything checked out. Then Mr. Huang leaned toward his assistant and murmured something Iris almost missed. Almost. The word was Hokkien, not Mandarin. A dialect spoken in southern Fujian province and Taiwan. Older, rougher. The language of her grandmother's village. The language Iris had grown up hearing in her grandmother's kitchen, learning alongside the recipes and stories that connected her to a homeland she'd never seen. Most translators wouldn't have caught it. Most wouldn't have known the difference. Iris did. The American is distracted. Tonight we move on the sister. Her blood turned to ice. She kept her face neutral, kept translating the official conversation, her voice steady even as her mind raced. The assistant murmured something else. Coordinates, she thought. A time. Another Hokkien phrase that made her stomach drop. The leverage will bring him to his knees. Nico was watching her. She could feel his attention like a physical weight. Those dark eyes missing nothing. When Mr. Lin paused for a drink of water, Iris leaned toward Nico as if consulting her notes. "They're speaking Hokkien to each other," she murmured, barely moving her lips. "They're planning something tonight." Something about your sister. One word changed everything. Sister. Nico went still. The transformation was instant, the polished businessman vanishing, replaced by something predatory and cold. His hand found her wrist under the table, gripping hard enough to bruise. What exactly did they say? Tonight we move on the sister. And something about leverage. She kept her voice barely audible. They think you're distracted. They think no one understands. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. The Taiwanese executives continued their performance, unaware that their secret language had been cracked. Then Nico smiled. It was the most terrifying expression Iris had ever seen. Warm, genuine, completely disconnected from the murder in his eyes. "Mr. Lin," he said, his voice pleasant. "I wonder if we might take a short break. My translator needs some air." Of course, of course." Lin's smile was equally false. "We'll resume in 15 minutes?" "Perfect." Nico guided Iris out of the conference room with a hand on her lower back, his touch burning through her blouse. The moment the door closed, he was on his phone, speaking rapid Italian she couldn't follow. "How sure are you?" he demanded when he hung up. "Completely. Hokkien was my grandmother's first language. I've been speaking it since I was 3. She pulled her wrist from his grip, rubbing the marks he'd left. "Who's your sister? What are they planning?" "My sister is Gianna. She's 23, and she's supposed to be safe at our family compound in Connecticut." His jaw tightened. The Taiwanese businessmen in that room are frontmen for a rival organization. They've been trying to find leverage against me for months. And your sister is leverage. My sister is everything. The words came out raw, unguarded. She's the only family I have left. If they touch her. His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and the color drained from his face. "What is it?" "She's gone." His voice was barely a whisper. "They took her 2 hours ago. While we were sitting in that room talking about semiconductors, they—" He stopped. His hands were shaking. Iris should stay out of this. Should take her fee and disappear into the night. Pretend she'd never heard Hokkien whispered across a conference table. This wasn't her world. These weren't her problems. But she thought of her own mother, lost in a mind that no longer recognized her daughter. She thought of what it meant to have someone be your everything and what it would feel like to lose them. "The assistant," she said. "He mentioned coordinates. A time. I might be able to—" "You understood the coordinates?" "Pieces. I'd need to hear it again, but I have a good memory for—" Nico grabbed her arm, pulling her back toward the conference room. "Then we're going back in there, and you're going to get me everything. They'll know something's wrong if you—" "I don't care what they know." His eyes burned into hers. "My sister's life is worth more than their suspicions. Are you with me or not?" It wasn't really a question. Iris could see the desperation beneath the command, the fear he was barely controlling. This man, this criminal, this monster, this whatever he was, loved his sister enough to burn everything else down. "I'm with you," she heard herself say. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or gratitude. "When this is over," he said quietly, "I'm going to owe you more than money can repay. Let's survive this first, then we can talk about debts." They walked back into the conference room. Iris sat down, opened her tablet, and prepared to catch every whispered word in a language the enemy thought no one could understand. Her grandmother had always said Hokkien would be useful someday. She'd never imagined it would be quite like this. The second half of the meeting was a master class in deception. Nico played his part perfectly. Attentive, engaged, asking questions about manufacturing timelines while his men mobilized across the city. Iris translated with mechanical precision, her ears straining for every Hokkien whisper, her mind cataloging fragments like pieces of a lethal puzzle. The assistant was careless. Confident in the obscurity of his dialect, he murmured updates to Mr. Huang between negotiation points. A warehouse address on the waterfront, a timeline, midnight, less than 3 hours away, and a name that made Nico's hand clench beneath the table when Iris relayed it. Chen Wei Lin, the man apparently orchestrating everything. Enough. Nico stood abruptly, his smile never faltering. Gentlemen, I think we've made excellent progress tonight. My team will review the proposals and be in touch. The Taiwanese executives exchanged glances, uncertain, suspicious, but unable to identify what had shifted. Of course, Mr. Valenti. Lin rose, extending his hand. We look forward to continuing our partnership. Nico shook it with the warmth of a man who wasn't planning to destroy him. As do I. The moment the elevator doors closed on their guests, Nico's mask shattered. The warehouse, he said to the men who materialized from adjacent rooms. I want every entrance covered. No one leaves until I arrive. Sir, if they see us coming, they won't see anything until I want them to. He turned to Iris, and the intensity in his eyes made her step back. You're coming with me. What? No, I did what you asked. I'm done. You're the only person who can understand what they're saying. If there are other operatives, other plans. He moved closer, crowding her space. My sister's life depends on information you can extract. I need you there. I'm a translator, not a soldier. I'm not asking you to fight. I'm asking you to listen. His voice dropped, rough with desperation. Please, I'll keep you safe. I'll pay you anything you want. But I can't do this without you. The pleas undid her. This man, who commanded rooms with a glance, who made armed men jump at his word, was begging. For his sister. For family. The only currency that had ever meant anything to Iris. If I die tonight, you're paying for my mother's care for the rest of her life. Done. And I'm not going anywhere near the actual fighting. You'll stay in the vehicle until the building is secure. Fine. She grabbed her bag, her heart hammering. Let's go save your sister. The drive to the waterfront was tense and silent. Iris sat in the back of an armored SUV, surrounded by men with guns and grim expressions, trying not to think about how completely her life had derailed in the span of 2 hours. Tell me about her, she said finally. Gianna. Nico glanced at her from the front seat, surprise flickering across his features. Why? Because if I'm risking my life for someone, I'd like to know who they are. A long pause, then quietly. She's an artist. Painter. She has a studio in Soho that she thinks I don't know about, where she creates work that's too political and too honest for our family's reputation. Something softened in his voice. She's the only person who's never been afraid of me. When our parents died, she was 15. I was 23, and suddenly responsible for everything. The business, the family, her. I made a lot of mistakes, but she never stopped believing I could be better. She sounds remarkable. She is. She's also stubborn, reckless, and completely convinced she can take care of herself. His jaw tightened. Which is probably how they got to her. The warehouse materialized from the darkness, a sprawling structure on a forgotten pier, its windows black, its walls tagged with graffiti that spoke of abandonment. But the cars parked outside told a different story, as did the figures moving in shadows near the entrances. Stay here, Nico said, turning to face her. Marco will be with you. If anything goes wrong, define wrong. If you hear gunfire that doesn't stop, if the radio goes silent, if anyone approaches this vehicle who isn't me. His hand found hers, squeezing once. Run, don't wait. Don't try to help. Just run. Nico. I mean it. His eyes held hers, dark and burning. You've already given me more than I had any right to ask for. If this goes badly, you survive. Promise me. She should promise. Should nod and agree and mean it. I'll try, she said instead. He laughed. A broken, surprised sound. Impossible, woman. So I've been told. He looked at her for a moment longer, really looked, like he was memorizing her face, and then he was gone, disappearing into the darkness with his men like smoke dissolving into shadow. Iris sat in the armored vehicle, watching the warehouse through bulletproof glass, and waited to see if the man she'd just met would live or die. The minutes crawled. 10. 15. She heard muffled sounds. Shouts, crashes, things she couldn't identify and didn't want to. Marco sat rigid beside her, his hand on his weapon, his eyes never leaving the building. Then, gunfire. Not the controlled bursts of a tactical operation, but the chaos of something gone wrong. Stay here, Marco ordered, reaching for the door. What's happening? I don't know. Stay. The radio crackled. A voice, panicked. We need the translator. Now. They've got Gianna wired with something and the instructions are in Mandarin, or Hikian, or something only Iris could understand. She was out of the car before Marco could stop her, running toward gunfire, toward danger, toward a woman she'd never met and a man she barely knew. Her grandmother would have been horrified, but her grandmother had also taught her that family, real family, chosen family, was worth any risk. And somewhere in the last 3 hours, Nico Valenti had started to feel like someone worth saving. The warehouse was chaos. Iris ducked through a side door Marco had propped open, her heart slamming against her ribs. Gunfire echoed from somewhere deeper in the structure. Bodies lay in corridors she sprinted past. She didn't look closely, couldn't afford to, just kept following the shouting toward the center of the building. She found them in a cavernous main room, surrounded by shipping containers and shadows. Gianna Valenti sat bound to a chair, her dark hair matted with blood, her face a mask of defiance despite the terror in her eyes. Around her neck hung a device, metal and wires, and a small digital display counting down in red numbers. A bomb. And taped to the chair beside her, a phone playing a voice on loop. Hokkien. Rapid, technical, describing the device's mechanism in dialect so dense Iris had to concentrate to follow. Iris! Nico's voice cut through the chaos. He was crouched behind a container, pinned down by gunfire from a catwalk above. The recording, what does it say? She dropped beside him, pressing her back to cold metal, her breath coming in gasps. It's instructions. Disarmament sequence, but it's complicated. There are codes, specific steps. Can you translate them? I can try. The countdown read 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Iris listened, really listened, blocking out the gunfire and the shouting and the terror clawing at her throat. The voice on the recording was methodical, clinical. A man who enjoyed his own cleverness, embedding the key to survival in a language he assumed no one present could understand. But Iris could. Third wire from the left. The green one has to be cut first, she called out, her voice steadier than she felt. Then there's a keypad sequence, 74291. After that, the red panel opens and there's a manual override. Are you sure? One of Nico's men, a demolitions expert she assumed from his tools, had reached Gianna's chair. As sure as I can be when someone's shouting bomb instructions in a Chinese dialect from the 1800s. The man cut the green wire. The countdown continued. Keypad, 74291. He punched in the numbers. A click. The red panel popped open. Manual override. There should be a switch. The timer hit 1 minute 30 seconds. I see it. The man's hands were steady despite everything. Flipping now. The countdown stopped at 1 minute and 7 seconds. Silence fell over the warehouse, the particular silence of people who'd just escaped death by the width of a wire. Then Gianna laughed. broken, hysterical, but alive. Nico, her voice cracked. Nico, I'm okay, He was across the room before Iris could blink, cutting his sister's bonds, pulling her into an embrace so fierce it looked like it hurt. Italian poured from his lips, too fast for Iris to catch, words that sounded like prayers and curses tangled together. The shooter on the catwalk, one of his men reported, got away. Chen Wei-lin's people scattered when the bomb failed. Find them. Nico's voice was ice, even as he held his sister. Find them all. Iris slumped against the shipping container, the adrenaline draining from her body and leaving her hollow. Her hands were shaking. Her legs didn't feel entirely solid. She'd just helped disarm a bomb in a language her grandmother had taught her over dim sum. Life had taken a surreal turn. You! Gianna's voice made her look up. Nico's sister was standing now, supported by her brother, her eyes finding Iris across the chaos. You're the translator? Iris Chen. You saved my life. Gianna crossed to her, pulling free of Nico's grip despite his protest. Up close, she was beautiful, sharp-featured, fierce, with eyes that held the same intensity as her brother's. I heard you, translating the instructions, staying calm while a bomb counted down around my neck. I wasn't calm, I was terrified. But you did it anyway. Gianna took her hand, squeezed hard. That's what brave looks like, terrified and doing it anyway. Nico appeared at his sister's shoulder, his eyes fixed on Iris with something she couldn't read. We need to move, he said. Chen Wei-lin knows the bomb failed. He'll have backup plans. Then let's get out of here. Gianna's jaw set with a stubbornness Iris recognized from her brother's description. And take her with us. Anyone who can do what she just did deserves better than being left behind. They bundled into vehicles and drove, not to the hotel, but to a compound outside the city that appeared from the darkness like a fortress emerging from the sea. Gates, guards, walls that looked designed to withstand sieges. Iris was too exhausted to ask questions. The room they gave her was larger than her apartment. She showered mechanically, scrubbing away the warehouse's grime, and collapsed into a bed softer than anything she'd ever owned. She was asleep in seconds. The next 3 days existed in a strange limbo. Iris wasn't allowed to leave. For your safety, Nico said, though it felt more like imprisonment wrapped in silk. Her mother's facility had been contacted. Bills paid in advance for 6 months. A security detail assigned to the premises. Nico's doing, she assumed. She should be angry about the high-handedness. Instead, she felt oddly grateful. Gianna became her unexpected companion. The younger Valenti had a sprained wrist and a concussion that kept her bedridden, but she insisted on company, and she'd chosen Iris. Tell me about yourself, Gianna demanded on the second day, propped against pillows in her enormous bed. My brother's been investigating you since you got here. I'd rather hear your version. What's his version? Hardworking, loyal, taking care of a mother with dementia while holding down 3 jobs. No criminal record, no connections to any organization he should worry about. Gianna's eyes sparkled with mischief. Also, unexpectedly brave and more stubborn than strategically advisable. He said that? He said something much less articulate, but that was the gist. Gianna leaned forward, wincing at the movement. You interest him. That's rare. My brother doesn't get interested in people. I just happen to speak the right language at the right time. No, you happen to risk your life for a stranger's sister, talk back to a man everyone else fears, and then fall asleep in the middle of an enemy compound like you trusted us to keep you safe. Gianna's expression softened. That's not luck. That's character. The evening of the 3rd day, Nico summoned her to his study. He looked different than he had at the hotel, less polished, more human. Stubble shadowed his jaw. His shirt was unbuttoned at the collar. sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked tired in a way that made Iris want to smooth the furrow from his brow. Chen Weilin has gone to ground, he said without preamble. My people are hunting him, but it could take weeks, maybe months. And in the meantime? In the meantime, you're in danger. He gestured to a folder on his desk. He knows you foiled his plan. He knows you can understand his people's communications. That makes you a threat. And Chen Weilin doesn't leave threats alive. Iris's stomach dropped. So what do I do? You stay here, under my protection. His eyes met hers, dark and serious. Your mother has been moved to a facility with better security. Your apartment is being watched. Until Chen Weilin is dealt with, you disappear. You can't just make decisions about my life. I can, when your life is in danger because of me. He moved closer, and she refused to step back. You saved my sister. You've become a target because you helped me. Taking responsibility for that isn't controlling, it's honoring a debt. I don't want to be a debt. Then what do you want to be? The question hung between them, loaded with meanings neither was ready to name. I don't know yet, she said finally, but I want the choice to figure it out. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe, or understanding. Then stay, figure it out. And when Chen Weilin is dead and you're safe, you can walk away with enough money to never work again. He paused. Or you can stay for different reasons. That choice will be yours too. It wasn't freedom, but it was the closest thing to it she was likely to get. Fine, she said. I'll stay. But I want access to information. If I'm going to be trapped here, I want to be useful. Useful how? You said Chen Weilin's people communicate in Hokkien. Let me listen. Let me help track him. She lifted her chin. I'm not going to sit around being a damsel while other people decide my fate. Nico studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he smiled. Gianna was right about you. What did she say? That you were trouble? His smile widened. The best kind. The days that followed established a strange routine. Iris listened to intercepted communications, translating fragments that helped Nico's people narrow Chen Weilin's location. She ate meals with Gianna, who was recovering quickly and whose sharp wit made captivity almost bearable. She saw Nico in passing, meetings, briefings, moments where their eyes met across rooms and held for beats too long. Something was building between them. She felt it in her chest every time he was near, a warmth that had nothing to do with gratitude and everything to do with the way he looked at her. Like she mattered, like she was more than useful. 2 weeks into her stay, her mother's facility called. Miss Chen. The director's voice was tense. There's been an incident. Someone tried to access your mother's room last night. Our security stopped them, but the world went sideways. Iris gripped the phone so hard her knuckles went white. Is she okay? She's fine, unharmed, but we thought you should know. She found Nico in his study, interrupting a meeting without apology. Chen Weilin knows about my mother. Her voice shook. He tried to get to her. If your security hadn't been there. They were there. Nico was on his feet, crossing to her. She's safe. She won't be if this keeps going. He's going to keep trying until... He's not going to get the chance. Nico's hands found her shoulders, steadying her. I'm ending this. Tonight. We found his location. Then let me help. Absolutely not. He came after my mother. Iris's voice hardened into something unrecognizable. My mother, who doesn't even remember my name most days, who never hurt anyone, who has nothing to do with any of this. She grabbed his shirt, pulling him close. I want to look him in the eye when he realizes he failed. I want him to know that the woman who stopped him is the same one he tried to destroy. Nico stared at her. Something fierce and tender warred in his expression. You'll stay behind the lines. You'll do exactly what I say. I will. And when this is over? He stopped. His hand rose to cup her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. When this is over, we're going to talk about what this is between us. Is that a threat or a promise? Both. His forehead touched hers. It's always both with you. They left that night, driving toward a confrontation that would end in blood or freedom. And Iris, who had walked into a hotel room expecting a simple translation job, prepared to face the man who'd threatened everyone she loved. Chen Weilin had chosen a shipping yard for his final stand. Containers stacked like metal mountains, cranes looming against the night sky, the distant sound of waves crashing against the harbor wall. The kind of place where people disappeared and no one asked questions. Iris sat in the command vehicle, headphones pressed to her ears, listening to the chatter of Chen's men as they coordinated their positions. Her translations flowed to Nico's team in real time. Guard rotations, weapon placements, the location of the container where Chen himself waited. He's nervous, she murmured, talking about escape routes, a boat waiting at Pier 7. Nico's voice came through her earpiece. Block the pier. No one leaves. She watched on thermal imaging as his men moved through the yard like ghosts, silent and lethal. The operation was surgical. Guards neutralized before they could raise alarms, positions secured, the noose tightening around Chen Weilin with ruthless efficiency. And then, everything went wrong. They've got a second frequency? Iris yanked off her headphones, switching channels frantically. Chen's communicating with someone outside the yard. He knows you're coming. There's a backup team. An explosion rocked the command vehicle. Iris was thrown sideways, her head striking the console, stars exploding behind her eyes. Alarms screamed. Through the smoke, she saw the driver slumped over the wheel, unconscious or worse. She kicked open the door and stumbled into chaos. Gunfire erupted from everywhere, the backup team Chen had summoned, pouring into the yard from an entrance Nico's men hadn't covered. The careful operation devolved into a firefight, shadows and muzzle flashes and the screams of men who'd underestimated their enemy. Iris! Nico's voice in her earpiece, ragged with fear. Where are you? Report! The command vehicle was hit. She ducked behind a container as bullets pinged off metal. I'm pinned down near the east entrance. Stay there. I'm coming. No. Chen's getting away. The pier, Nico. He's heading for the boat. A pause. The impossible mathematics of war. Save the woman or stop the enemy. I don't care about Chen. I care about you. The words hit her like a physical blow. This man, who'd spent weeks hunting his enemy, who'd nearly lost his sister, who had every reason to prioritize the mission, was choosing her. I can stop him. Iris didn't know where the certainty came from. The boat. It's at Pier 7. If I can get there before he does? Absolutely not. He won't expect me. He thinks I'm just a translator. She was already moving, staying low, using the containers for cover. I can delay him until your men arrive. Iris, if you die, then avenge me. She couldn't believe she was making jokes, couldn't believe she was running toward danger instead of away from it. But I'm not letting him escape. Not after what he did to Gianna, not after what he tried to do to my mother. Nico's response was lost in static as she moved out of range. The pier materialized from the darkness, a concrete finger stretching into black water, a sleek boat bobbing at its end. And walking toward it, flanked by two guards, was a man she recognized from surveillance photos. Chen Weilin. Smaller than she'd expected. Older. The kind of face that disappeared into crowds. Unremarkable in every way except for the cruelty lurking behind ordinary features. Iris stepped out of the shadows. Going somewhere? Chen's guards raised their weapons, but he held up a hand, stopping them. His eyes narrowed, recognition flickering. The translator, His English was accented but clear. "You've caused me a great deal of trouble." "Good." She kept her voice steady despite the terror pounding through her veins. "It was the least I could do after you tried to blow up my friend's sister." "Friend?" Chen smiled, and it was every bit as cold as she'd imagined. "Is that what Nico Valenti is to you? A friend?" He stepped closer, his guards flanking him. "You've chosen the wrong side, Miss Chen. The Valentis are dying breed. Old world thinking in a new world game." "And you're better?" "I'm adaptable." He gestured at the chaos behind her, the gunfire, the explosions, the operation falling apart. "Tonight proves it. Valenti thought he was hunting me, but I've been hurting him exactly where I wanted. Into a trap. Into his grave." Chen's smile widened. "By morning, he and his men will be dead. His sister will be mine again, and you." He tilted his head, studying her. "You might be useful. A translator with your skills, your access. I could offer you more than Valenti ever could. I'd rather die." "That can be arranged." He nodded to his guards. "Killer." Iris dropped. The gunshot passed over her head as she hit the concrete, rolling behind a mooring post that provided almost no cover. She heard footsteps approaching, heard Chen's laughter, heard her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. This was it. This was how she died. On a pier. In the dark. Because she'd been stupid enough to think she could make a difference. Then she heard something else. A voice. Hokkien. One of Chen's guards, reporting into a radio. "The perimeter is breached. They're everywhere. We need to go now." Chen's laughter stopped. "What did he say?" he demanded. Iris lifted her head, and despite everything, the guns, the fear, the certainty of death, she smiled. "He said you've been outplayed." The night exploded. Nico's backup team, the real backup, the one he'd held in reserve, poured onto the pier from every direction. Chen's guards went down before they could fire. Chen himself stumbled backward, reaching for a weapon, his face twisted with shock and fury. But Nico was faster. He emerged from the darkness like an avenging angel, blood on his face and death in his eyes. His hand closed around Chen's throat, lifting the smaller man off his feet. "You threatened my sister." Nico's voice was barely human. "You tried to kill the woman I love, and you thought you could escape on a boat." "Valenti." Chen clawed at the hand crushing his windpipe. "We can negotiate." "No." Nico's grip tightened. "We can't." "Nico." Iris's voice cut through the darkness. She'd risen to her feet, bruised and shaking but alive. "Don't." He turned his head, just slightly. Those dark eyes found hers. "He deserves to die." "Maybe. But you deserve to live." She moved closer, stepping over bodies she couldn't afford to acknowledge. "If you kill him like this, in cold blood, unarmed, it changes something. It makes you what he is. And you're not that." She reached him, her hand covering his on Chen's throat. "You're better than that. Gianna believes it. I believe it. You don't know what he's done. I know what you've done. The foundation in your father's name. The shelters for trafficking victims. The way you held your sister in that warehouse like she was the most precious thing in the world." Her voice cracked. "I know who you are, Nico. And it's not this." The silence stretched. Chen's face was turning purple. Nico's arm trembled with the effort of restraint. Then, slowly, he released his grip. Chen crumpled to the pier, gasping, and Nico's men swarmed him, cuffing his hands, dragging him upright, carrying him toward a fate that would be worse than death, but legally sanctioned. Nico stood motionless, staring at his empty hands. "You called me the woman you love." Iris's voice was barely a whisper. He looked at her. Really looked, with eyes that held exhaustion and relief, and something else. something vast and terrifying and beautiful. I did. Did you mean it? I don't say things I don't mean. He moved toward her, closing the distance between them. Not to you. Not ever. We've known each other for 3 weeks. I've known you my whole life. His hands cupped her face, tilting it toward his. I just didn't meet you until now. She kissed him. It wasn't gentle, wasn't careful. It was desperate and consuming, born of terror and relief, and the particular madness of people who'd just survived the unsurvivable. His arms crushed her against him, her fingers tangled in his hair. They kissed until breathing became necessary and then kissed some more. When they finally broke apart, his forehead pressed to hers, she was crying. I thought I was going to die, she whispered. I thought I was going to lose you. His voice cracked. When the command vehicle exploded, when I heard the gunfire and you weren't responding. I'm here. She gripped his shirt, pulling him closer. I'm here, Nico. I'm not going anywhere. Promise me. His hands tightened on her waist. Promise me you'll stay. Not because of the danger, not because I'm protecting you. Because you want to. Because this... He pressed a hand to his chest, over his heart. Because this is real. It's real. She kissed him again, softly this time. It was real from the moment you begged me to help save your sister. It's been real every day since. Around them, the aftermath of battle, bodies being cleared, Chen being loaded into a vehicle that would carry him toward justice, the sounds of victory settling over a pier that had almost been her grave. But none of it mattered. All that mattered was this man, holding her like she was precious, looking at her like she'd hung the stars. Take me home, she said. Which home? Yours. She smiled through her tears. Ours. And Nico Valenti, crime lord, businessman, brother, lover, smiled back like she'd given him the world. Ours? He agreed. I like the sound of that. 4 months later, Iris stood in her mother's room and watched her smile at a stranger. The new facility was beautiful. Private gardens, art therapy programs, staff who treated their patients like family rather than burdens. Her mother sat by the window in a patch of afternoon sunlight, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes clear in a way they hadn't been for months. You have a visitor, Mrs. Chen, the nurse said gently. Her mother looked up, studied Iris's face with the particular attention of someone searching for something lost. You look like my daughter, she said finally. She has your eyes. Iris's throat tightened. On good days, her mother recognized her. On bad days, she was a kind stranger with a familiar face. Today was somewhere in between. I am your daughter, Mama. She knelt beside the chair, taking her mother's weathered hands. I came to tell you something. Something happy. Happy is good. Her mother nodded sagely. There should be more happy. I'm getting married. The words still felt surreal, even after 3 weeks of wearing the ring Nico had slipped onto her finger. Sapphires surrounded by diamonds. His grandmother's, he'd told her, brought from Italy generations ago. A family heirloom for the woman who'd become family. Her mother's face lit up. Married? To a good man? To a complicated man. Iris laughed through the tears she couldn't stop. But yes, Mama, a good one. He takes care of me. He takes care of you. He... She stopped, overwhelmed by everything she wanted to say. He sees me, the way Baba never did, the way no one ever has. Then he's worthy. Her mother squeezed her hands with surprising strength. Your grandmother always said, the right person sees you when everyone else looks through you. I remember. She was wise, your grandmother. Stubborn, but wise. A flicker of something crossed her mother's face. Memory, maybe, surfacing briefly before sinking again. She spoke Hokkien. Did you know that? I know, Mama. Iris kissed her forehead. She taught me, and it saved my life. The proposal had come on a quiet evening, 3 weeks after Chen Weilin disappeared into the federal prison system that would hold him for the rest of his natural life. They'd been on the terrace of the compound. Their compound now. The place Iris had stopped calling a prison and started calling home. Stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on velvet. The distant sound of Gianna's music drifting from her studio, where she'd been painting something she refused to let anyone see. I've been thinking, Nico said, his arm around her shoulders, his voice casual in a way that immediately made her suspicious. Dangerous habit. About language. He ignored her teasing, about how one word can change everything. How sister made me trust a stranger. How stay turned a translator into something else entirely. Something else? He turned to face her, and the look in his eyes stole her breath. Everything. He reached into his pocket. You became everything, Iris, and I want to spend the rest of my life learning new words with you. The ring caught the starlight when he opened the box. Beautiful. Elegant. Perfect. Nico. In Hokkien, he said, and his accent was terrible, his tones all wrong, but he was trying. God, he was trying. How do you say marry me? She laughed, cried, threw her arms around his neck and kissed him until neither of them could breathe. Yes, she said against his lips, in any language. Yes. The wedding was small, intimate, held in the compound's garden on an afternoon golden with autumn light. Gianna served as maid of honor, resplendent in crimson, her eyes suspiciously bright throughout the ceremony. She'd become the sister Iris never had, fierce and loyal and determined to teach her future sister-in-law every embarrassing story from Nico's childhood. He cried at the Lion King, Gianna had whispered the night before. He was 19. I have photographic evidence. I'm going to use that information responsibly. No, you're not. No, I'm not. Iris's mother was there too, in her wheelchair, attended by nurses who kept her comfortable and calm. She didn't understand what was happening. Not really, but she smiled through the entire ceremony, occasionally commenting on how beautiful the flowers were. It was enough. It had to be enough. The vows were simple, traditional in structure, personal in content. I promise to see you, Iris said, her hands clasped in Nico's, her voice steady despite the tears. Not the empire or the power or the name the world fears. You, the man who begged a stranger to help save his sister. The brother who held Gianna like she was precious. The person who learned terrible Hokkien just to propose. She smiled through her tears. I promise to keep seeing you every day for the rest of our lives. And I promise to be worth seeing, Nico replied, his voice rough with emotion. To be the man you believe I am. To protect you and your mother and everyone you love with everything I have. His thumb traced her knuckles. I promise to keep learning. New words, new languages, new ways to tell you that you're the best thing that ever happened to me. When they kissed, Gianna cheered loud enough to startle birds from nearby trees. Finally, she shouted. I've been waiting months for this. You've known him for 3 years, Iris pointed out, and he's been insufferable since he met you. The pining, Iris. The pining was unbearable. Nico's face flushed, actually flushed, and Iris filed that away as evidence that the most powerful man she knew could still be embarrassed by his little sister. The reception stretched into evening, then into night. Dancing under strings of lights. Toasts from Nico's lieutenants who turned out to be surprisingly eloquent when not discussing criminal enterprises. A moment, late in the evening, when Iris's mother took her hand and said, with perfect clarity, I'm proud of you, daughter. Your grandmother would be too. She was gone again a moment later, retreated into the fog that claimed her more often than not. but the words remained, warm in Iris's chest like a promise from beyond. Later, much later, Iris stood at the window of the bedroom she now shared with her husband and watched the moon rise over the grounds. Nico's arms wrapped around her from behind, pulling her back against his chest. She felt his heartbeat, steady and strong, and marveled at how quickly this had become home. "What are you thinking?" he murmured against her hair. "About language." She turned in his arms, looping her hands behind his neck. "About how my grandmother taught me Hokkien over dim sum. About how my mother spoke it to me when she forgot English. About how one stupid word in a dialect most people have never heard of, led me here." "Sister," he said softly. "Sister." She pressed her forehead to his. "You said that word, and I knew you weren't just a criminal. You were a brother, someone who loved deeply enough to be destroyed by loss." Her fingers traced his jaw. "I think I started falling for you in that moment, before I even knew your name. And now? Now I know your name." She kissed him softly. All of them. Nico Valenti, crime lord, philanthropist, brother, husband. She smiled against his lips. "Mine." "Yours," he agreed, "in every language." They stood together as the night deepened, two people who had found each other through the chaos of violence and fear, who had built something beautiful from the wreckage of their separate lives. Tomorrow would bring challenges. There were always challenges. Chen Wei-lin's organization was dismantled but not destroyed. Rival families still circled. The legitimate business ventures Nico was expanding required constant attention, and Iris's mother would continue to fade, slowly but inevitably, into a place where love couldn't follow. But tonight, there was only this: the warmth of his arms, the peace of their home, the knowledge that whatever came next, they would face it together. Iris thought about the woman she'd been 4 months ago, desperate, exhausted, taking a translation job because she couldn't afford to say no. She'd walked into a hotel room expecting to interpret business negotiations and walked out with her entire life transformed. One word. That's all it had taken. Sister. Spoken in a dialect her grandmother had preserved across generations. Caught by ears trained from childhood to hear what others missed. Relayed to a man who would have died without it. Her grandmother had been right, all those years ago, teaching Hokkien to a child who couldn't understand why it mattered. Language was power. Language was connection. Language was the bridge between strangers that could become, against all odds, love. "Come to bed," Nico murmured. "We have the rest of our lives for stargazing." "Is that a promise?" "The first of many." He swept her into his arms, carrying her toward the bed with a smile that still made her heart race. "I'm going to spend a lifetime making promises to you, Mrs. Valenti, and keeping every single one." She laughed as he laid her down, as his lips found hers, as the night wrapped around them like a blessing. Some love stories begin with grand gestures. Some begin with whispered confessions. Theirs began with a single word, caught across a conference table, translated in a heartbeat, powerful enough to change everything. And it would continue, Iris knew, in all the languages they would learn together. One word at a time, forever. Thank you all for following this story. If you enjoyed it, please write in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video, as your support is essential for me to continue creating content like this.